Yes.
Pete, what's been the most difficult day, the worst day of your last 12 months?
I think it'd be when the landlords and the real estate agent rolled in with the locksmith and said they're changing the locks and you've got 15 minutes to vacate. Yeah.
Department of Dumb Questions, how did that feel?
Fucking shit. I don't know, it was just it was a blur, really. It was just like, I have no idea what's happening. I have no idea how I'm going to take myself out of this situation. It was just like, fuck, what now?
Let's press rewind on that scene. I've known you, it's got to be a decade now. We must have been very young when we met. And I knew you as a player around the front of house scene at some of Sydney's better regarded restaurants and wine bars. And for as long as I've known you, from the day I met you, anonymous restaurant critic that I was, you were always talking about doing something for Korean food. I made the terrible mistake of asking Pete once where to eat Korean food in Sydney, and he said, nowhere. It's all equally terrible. Including his parents' restaurant, which I thought was an interesting comment at the time. And he said he wanted to do something about that. He wanted to honour the traditions of Korean food with the kind of attention and care that we in Australia honour a whole bunch of other food traditions. And from there, he went on to do a series of pop-ups as Soul of Sydney and other things like that. So basically, for the whole time I've known Pete, opening the restaurant that he opened in Melbourne was pretty much his mission. Pete, how did you get there?
I guess I grew up with my parents owning Australia's first Korean grocery store back in the 80s. And then my dad owns now 2 restaurants in Sydney that are quite successful in the Korean food restaurant business scene.
Successful in terms of?
Financial and whatnot.
Pays the rent, keeps the doors open.
They pay
has
their
customers.
wages, has customers, has people waiting all the time. Yeah, and then, like as everyone, they're always searching for a purpose and a goal in life. Yeah, and then I randomly ended up on a job offer in the States to be a representative for a company that sold parts for planes, spaceships, and military. Yeah, and that was the first time I kind of really left hospitality. And then, they paid really well. They sent me back to America to start working for them here, and it was 10 hours a week. So I had a lot of time. I went back to my dad's restaurant, and that was the moment a light sparked, and it was like, restaurants are me. I want to be in restaurants.
So you were making tons of money selling aerospace and spaceship parts, not working that many hours a week, when suddenly you were like, I really want to work in this trade where I work a lot more and make a lot less money. This is it. This is me.
Yes, and it still is.
What did your parents say when you decided to ditch that lucrative, rare, fantastic spaceship job for getting into the trade?
They hate everything I want to do.
That's in the present tense. They still hate everything you want to do.
They still hate everything I want to do.
Okay. Big shout out to Pete's mum and dad. If you're watching on the internet, hi.
Yeah.
And from that revelation to opening your restaurant in Melbourne, what was the executive express summary? What were the steps in between? It was not a path without its interest and variety.
Yeah. I just got the Good Food Guide, not knowing what the hell it meant, and just handed resumes to hatted restaurants and emailed, not knowing what to get and what to expect.
Did anyone here get an email at their hatted restaurant from Pete at the time? Okay. No shame in that. He started at the top. Couldn't get a job, and then randomly walked past a restaurant called Vini in Sydney, where the manager was a regular at my dad's restaurant. So she just said, come work for us. So I joined them, worked there, and then Berta, 121 BC, and then Momofuku Sayobe when they opened, and then while I was doing Soul of Sydney here and there pop-ups. Which were awesome, PS. Pete gathered together Korean people Korean people and people who liked to cook Korean food from a bunch of non-Korean restaurants all around Sydney and did pretty excellent pop-ups.
Yes, which was also my downfall because it caused a lot of stress. And then I disappeared for about 2 years. In that process, I was homeless for about 4 months, sleeping on trains. And then I ended up on a farm. And then I came back and I was like, I still want to do it. I still want to do it. This means way too much for me.
What was the it that you came back for when you still want to do it, that you came back? I mean, it can't be easy to come back to hospitality when you've disappeared, in that way.
It was finding who I am, what I stand for, what I mean, and what I represent. And I'm Korean, and that's what I am, and that's what I want to do. And I'll continue to do that. Yeah, it means too much to me. I know who I am. Thanks to Korean food, thanks to restaurants, and thanks to hospitality.
Here. How did a dream of a Sydney pop-up translate into a restaurant on a Melbourne laneway?
I think it just happened naturally.
So you'd come down here, you were still working front of house. Many of us in this room would have enjoyed your presence on the floor and your witty banter and, dainty moves at Bell's Hot Chicken and other such places.
Yeah. So I came, in Sydney after I came back from
this wine, no, it's meant to be like this.
Yeah, it's funky, it's natural, it's faulty, it's delicious.
Have some chicken.
After I got back from the farm, I worked for my dad again for a new restaurant he was opening, and he asked me to join, envisioning a better Korean restaurant that was in line with what I wanted to achieve, which I got.
Because where were the Korean restaurants of Australia failing you at that point?
Just lack of depth of what we actually do and what we actually eat.
In terms of the repertoire that was being represented, or?
Yeah, the repertoire, the education, the knowledge on our behalf as well. I told you about this, but I feel like Korea is one of the biggest appropriators of our cuisine and our history. We're chasing the American dream in Korea, so we forget who we are and what we did. Like the government's banned us from making gochujang, doenjang, kimchi back in the 60s. They've banned us from making our own booze. They've commercialized all those products. They still control heavily those markets, and cultures abroad. Like my mum makes kimchi different to the next mum or the next city, the next state. Like there's so many variations of it, but now it's kind of become singular in their cuisine.
Tell us how you came to open Shik.
When I first met you, that was already the intention. And you scared the shit out of me asking questions about things I don't know about Korean food.
Pete told me actually when I went to Shik early this year, he's like, there's something I have to tell you. And I'm like, yes. It's like the first time I met you, we were talking about Korean food and I was smiling and nodding because you're asking me questions about this stuff. And I'm like, I have no idea what the fuck this guy is talking about. Sorry about that, Pete.
But I think that's kind of how I see a lot of Koreans. We don't actually understand the depth of it or the history, and we just kind of label it things.
What did the restaurant look like in your head, though? Like, talk practicalities.
In the beginning, it was pretty wanky, like fine dining, whatever course, wine pairing, which isn't true to anything that's Korean. But I think it was because I was immature and I didn't really understand the cuisine myself. And then, every year I went to Korea, and every year that restaurant kind of evolved and changed, and my understanding of the cuisine kept changing. I contradicted myself with my understandings and my knowledge, and that kept changing, and it just kept changing and evolving.
And when did you sign a lease? When did you have that moment of like, okay, we're actually doing this?
When? 2017, October. I was in Korea. I had approached them and they said no, so I was like, fuck it, I'm going to Korea.
Does everyone know the site we're talking about? Pete, do you want to just give us the basics of the site?
Yeah, so 30 Niagara Lane. It's the laneway below Hardware Lane in the city near Tippo, where there's no foot traffic.
An essential thing for any restaurant. And you said to me the other day when we were chatting about this that you selected it for its absence of foot traffic.
Yes. It was kind of ballsy and stupid, I guess, in hindsight, but Like
How many square meters?
144 square meters.
Kitchen situation when you took the keys?
Disgusting.
But there was a kitchen?
Yes, there was a kitchen.
How much rent were you paying?
2,500 a week.
What were the terms of the lease?
There was 2 years left on the current option because I bought an existing business, and there were 2 5-year options after that with 3% increase annually. Outgoings on top. Yeah.
2,500 a week for how many square meters?
144.
140 square meters, existing kitchen, 0 foot traffic.
Yep.
Ballsy.
Genius, right?
It's ballsy. But this appealed to you because...
I guess I was naive. Like, you know, I think all of us are guilty of looking at some restaurant and thinking, fuck this shit, as if I can't do better, which is part of me opening there as well, taking that risk. But yeah, no, it was more, I didn't want people just walking in going, oh, you're a Korean restaurant, and then eating and then being like, what the fuck is this? This is not Korean food. Because everyone has a preconception of what Korean food is.
So you were setting up barriers for your customers. You kind of wanted the people who dined there to really want to be dining there.
Yes, I wanted people to come knowing that it was going to be a very different experience. I knew my food was going to be good, which is kind of arrogant in its own way as well.
And just to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, Pete had spent plenty of time in hospitality at this point, but his time was spent almost entirely on the floor. You were not a chef before you opened this restaurant.
No, I'm not a chef still.
But you technically were the chef at the restaurant.
Yes, all the food was under my direction. The recipes, the ideas, the developing, everything was me. Yes. But I feel like I was more a messenger for Korean cuisine rather than a chef. I didn't really try to interpret things my own way. I literally just took what history and knowledge that I had acquired, direct my food. Yeah, so that's the reason I don't see myself as a chef.
You opened the restaurant, and for my sins, I was living in Sydney at the time, so my version of this was from, a distance. But the way I heard it, the restaurant opened. You had fantastic reviews. People were from where I was reading about it. This was a new kind of Korean restaurant for Australia. Was that your perception as people in Melbourne? Muted nods. I'll take that as a yes. How did things go when you opened? It was you and how many in the kitchen and how many on the floor?
I had 4 full-time chefs, 1 part-time chef, 2 dishes on rotation.
How many covers and how many services?
I was doing 6 services, all dinner, Monday to Saturday. Front of house, I had 5 people, including myself.
What was payroll at the time?
8,000 minus tax and super. Yeah, and I held on to that for a bit too long. 4 months, I reckon I held on to that. Had I not held on to that, yes, I probably might even still be open. But I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, about hospitality in restaurants. Like all my peers were saying, your fucking restaurant is going to fucking kill it. Lines are going to be out the door.
Your friends in the trade.
Yeah. And then you look at restaurants that are successful and whatnot, and I guess, I was misguided. And then, being so emotionally attached to this restaurant, I wanted to believe it, and I chose to believe it.
But you didn't go into this as a total Pollyanna. I mean, when we talked about this the other day, you said that you had actually written a business plan. You had kicked the tires on sort of what you thought were roughly similar Korean restaurants in the neighborhood. Talk me through it. Yeah,
so I literally looked at all the restaurants in the Melbourne CBD. There were 90 something at the time, which is a lot, and half of them were heaving, like lines backed out, turning tables on a Monday night. Went to some of the more renowned Korean restaurants, I guess. And looked at the costs, and I said, okay, you're spending about $50 on food at the better Korean restaurants that the market sees. That's going to be my target, to aim to match that price. And I think I did. Like, my banquet menu was $59, and it was bloody generous. Most people wouldn't be able to finish it.
I finished it. How many, and what did you figure you needed to clear a week to keep the lights on?
250 people a week. which I thought was reasonable considering it sounds so fucking shit, but I knew I was going to have a lot of press. And I guess I purely relied on that.
You were relying on positive reviews and positive media coverage to put people to, I guess, get that foot traffic, get people coming through the door. You got a lot of positive press, by most measures.
Yep.
I mean, what sort of numbers were you doing in those first few weeks? I mean, give us a quick snapshot. You opened to presumably very, people in your social circle.
Yeah.
That ticked along for a few weeks. Then you would have got your press in the first month or so. These days, my restaurant reviewing brothers and sisters like to review a restaurant the day it opens, pretty much. So that would have happened in the first 3 weeks you were open.
Yeah, the first couple of weeks was about 20, 30 a night. Up and down, there'd be 0, there'd be 1, there'd be 10, there'd be 50 randomly. And then it just kind of sat at 20, 30 people a night.
Around how far in was that?
I don't even remember, to be honest.
You opened, what, about 18 months ago? You opened
in March 14.
Last year.
Yeah.
When did you start to get concerned that maybe things weren't working out the way that you'd expected them to work out?
I didn't. Which is why I held on to all the wage costs.
And what prompted your decision to cut back on your kitchen staff and their hours and your services?
Because I just ran out of money. And I was like, no, this can't go on. If I'm going to survive, I need to cut back. So I cut back on staff. Went down to 2 front of house, including myself. And then 3 full-time and 1 part-time. And the disher was on call. So I went down to about 3.5, 4 grand. So I halved it.
And you were doing pretty much everything at this point. You were running plates, you were welcoming customers, you were overseeing the kitchen.
Yes.
Plus.
And then, had to slim it down more. So I ended up doing prep for the kitchen as well, then doing front of house by myself for like at least a good 4 or 5 months of the restaurant at the end, while doing all the other admin and the wine list as well. Yeah, everything. But like at the same time, I still enjoyed it, which is fucked. Yeah.
I have recently had some people in my circle, my family and friends, have experiences with cancer, and you probably all know this, it's probably in your lives as well, but you probably also know that the etiquette is to not tell people about your aunt who went on a green juice diet that cleared her leukemia right up, and to not tell them to, not cut their hair when the moon is waxing, and to not tell them to get a lot of sun. That's really bad form. But at the same time, if your restaurant is going through rough times, it does seem to be the done thing that everyone has to offer you an opinion. I think I told Pete to buy a fucking sign, quote unquote.
Which I declined because I was like, no one's walking through this street anyway.
What was the response from your friends and colleagues while you were struggling? I have to say, I didn't come to the restaurant until January, by which point, the second I walked through the door, I said to Pete, hey, how's it going? He's like, it's going to hell. I'm going to have to close the restaurant, which is that cheery, upbeat Peter Joe that we all know and love. At what point were you starting to vocalize your concerns about the restaurant? And what were your friends saying? I mean,
everyone just kind of said, hold in. You've got great product. You've got a great restaurant. Everything's great. Just hold in. That was most of it.
And it is, that's probably what you say when your friends are doing it tough. You tend to say, I'm sure it's going to get better. Your product was great. The food was delicious by all accounts. I thought the food was delicious.
Thank you.
Did anyone, who ate it? Shik. Hands up. Hands up higher if you thought the food was great. Yeah.
Thanks,
I think
guys.
The people in this room have a clue.
Thank you.
It pains me to say this, but I've worked in the food media in Australia for 20 years, and maybe this marks me out as an incredibly naive person, but it took me a long time to realize that making good food and selling it at a good price and serving good drinks, it's maybe not the only path to success, and maybe it's not even the best path to success. I mean, can you speak to that, Pete? I mean,
I think there's two ways to do a restaurant. For me, I'm not a business operator. I know that now. I'm a dreamer. I'm an artist, if you want to say. Like, I want to continue recreating history and representing Korean cuisine to its fullest extent, and also learning more about the food, and then ultimately learning about the world. Like, for me, moving forward, it's about educating myself. Not like, I still want to do restaurants, but it's more about learning for myself rather than a business. I don't want to make $1 million still. Like, I want to open a restaurant that can sustain itself and allow me to continue studying, and through my studies let that influence how I do my food and reflect it through the food.
I am not giving you a bank loan.
No, don't. I think, Terry, you asked me would I do it again by myself. Yes, I would, because I understand that my goals aren't money driven, and if someone wants to like angel me, fuck, sweet.
Pete will spend your money.
But yeah, there's like, for me, the restaurant meant so much because it was so much about me finding who the hell I was and what I stand for and what I represent. And until now, it's always been about justifying my Korean blood, but it's now kind of changed and evolved where I want to embrace my Australian side. Like, I am Australian. Like, I'm yellow, but I'm still fucking Australian. I want to start embracing indigenous culture and their subsistent nature, because that's in line with Korean being subsistent in nature. What was the question again?
There wasn't a question. You were just freestyling. It was quite nice. I liked it.
So it's a tool for me to learn rather than operate a business. And then on the other side, there's restaurants like, do I have to name it? Chin Chin. They're fucking making heaps of money, churning, opening new restaurants back to back and just churning from the get-go. Like, yeah, it's either you're going to be a businessman or you're going to be business oriented, or you're going to be true to your nature and not operate a business and be smart about your choices.
You don't think there's a third path there?
I don't think so. I don't think so. For me, there isn't. Like, I can't seem to make sense of how do I operate a restaurant for someone else or myself to profit money when I'm experimenting the fuck out of my cuisine.
It's not a huge market.
No, exactly.
I'll tell you now.
Yeah, and it's Australia. Like, Melbourne's got 4 million people in Victoria. There's like 2 million people in Melbourne CBD on a given day. And there's I don't even know the stats, how many restaurants are there in the Melbourne CBD? Like 20, 30,000 or something? And 90 Korean restaurants, which is still climbing. I'm sure it's at like 110 now.
I invited questions for this session on social media, and thank you to everyone who submitted them. I've read them and ignored them. They were great. One of the ones that landed for me was, actually, it was a question that several people asked, several people who are in the trade. Their question was, when did you know it was time to get out? But you knew when the landlord walked in with the locksmith. So it was a different situation for you than for some people. If that hadn't happened, where would we be standing now? I mean, would you still be sort of pushing? What do you think would have happened?
To be honest, I think I would have lost it eventually.
What do you mean by that?
I think I opened the restaurant for the wrong reasons, the wrong purpose, the wrong goals. It was about me trying to get justification from other people about what I do and who I am. I was very insecure. My whole process in life has been insecurity. Like, I guess, like, I've always run away from problems. Me becoming homeless was running away from problems and being too proud to reach out to friends for help, to being honest and all that. And then through this process of learning Korean food, I've learned a lot about myself. I've become a lot more comfortable with who I am. But I also think the industry is very vulnerable. Like, we put our lives on the line to everyone else. You know, like, people have been eating 3 meals a day since they're born. We're in a trade that we're saying we're going to feed you better than what you've been eating all your life. You know, like, it's bound to be, no, that's shit. No, that's not a hot dog. No, that's not kimchi. you know, like, and especially because I was so emotionally invested in my identity of the restaurant, and the restaurant was the most selfish expression of myself to the world. And when you're expressing yourself and the world says no, it's hard. I couldn't cope because I wanted the justification from these people that haven't spent the past 10 years learning about the food or the cuisine or the history or working their life, like working their asses off 70, 80 hours a week learning about wine or learning how to be serviceable, learning how to be hospitable, you know, learning how to cook, learning how to pour wines, like learning how to clean fucking toilet bowls, like everything. And that was me. Shik was me on a plate. And everyone was, no, that's not Korean. Not everyone, but, you know, like, most of my peers would be like, this is fucking delicious, this is amazing, but they don't sustain a business. It's all the other people, randoms that come through that sustain a business.
I have a question for you. Are you angry at the people who came to the restaurant, or are you angry at the people who didn't come to the restaurant?
I'm angry at myself.
Because everyone who came to the restaurant, well, certainly a lot of them liked it, and some of them came more than once, but perhaps the problem was that more people didn't come to the restaurant. Like, I've read now, because I'm thorough. I've read all of the press about your restaurant that was published in the last 18 months, and in that, you know, that bunch of very positive reviews, you know, people were asking questions about the room, they were asking questions about the location, they were kind of dropping hints that it's not particularly necessarily comfortable, and I think it was Besha Rodell in the New York Times, you know, who, you know, is from the States, where maybe they've got a more sophisticated appreciation of Korean food, maybe they don't, certainly they probably do in LA. She was wondering if your restaurant would have been received differently had it been in Los Angeles or New York. What do you think? I mean, if you'd, I don't know, bought a fucking sign, or, you know, opened on Smith Street, or opened in Koreatown in Los Angeles, or not in Koreatown in, you know, West Hollywood, how many of these maybe situations have you played out in your head, and did that get you anywhere? Like, do you think that maybe it would have been a going concern? Maybe it was the name. I hate the name.
No. I think I fucked up. I opened for the wrong reasons. I truly believe that. I opened with the wrong objectives, and it wasn't the right time. But I also needed that process to understand myself more. And now I know I don't have to receive the justification from other people about what my food is and what it isn't. Because if you've eaten Korean food 10 times, that's Korean food to you. You know, like Koreans that eat Korean food, that's Korean to them. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. Does that make sense? Am I answering the question?
It makes a lot of sense. I really like that.
Yeah.
Did you write that down in your bullet journal? I know I did.
Yeah, so now it's truly about opening a restaurant for myself, not for my customers. But that sounds cunty.
So I'm guessing if you own a restaurant and things aren't going great, or maybe even if things are going great, the image of someone, your landlord, walking into the restaurant with the locksmith and a chain is something that would make you wake up sweating. You know, there's probably a few people in this room who've had a nightmare that's not a million miles from that. You get pushed out of your business after that 15 minutes, the doors are locked behind you, you walk away. What then?
I was stupidly thinking, where am I going to get loans again?
Where are you going to get loans again?
Yeah. Which private lender am I going to go to? Which bank am I going to go to? I'm already like almost 100 deep in private loans. Where next? And then like it just happened. I was like, you know what? Fuck it. So then I got on the phone. I called my friend Mark, who's the head chef at Supernormal, and I said, let me know if the job comes up. And then I called Matt Stone and said, is there jobs? I need a job. Yeah, and then it was just like, okay, I'm free. Not from the debts, obviously, but...
How much do you owe?
160, about.
160,000?
Yep. I wish it was $160.
A question from the internet. how do you decide which of your creditors to pay first?
I don't know. Like, it's just what I have, I give as much as I can.
You have said that unlike some people who are in the same position as you in Australian hospitality, that you are committed to paying back.
Yes, I will do whatever it takes to pay off everyone, including my staff's wages that I owe. I still can stay in contact with my staff to give them peace of mind that I'm not running away.
Wages, super.
Hopefully I can get away with not paying ATO.
There's no one here from the tax office, is there by any chance? Guess what? You can't.
Yeah. All my suppliers are friends that I've known for years as well. So I've been fortunate to an extent that they're being quite patient with me, and they know that I'm pretty committed to this whole situation. And it means a lot for me to pay off all I owe as well, so I can do it again.
So you're committed to doing it again?
Yes. I will do it again and again and again and again and again and again.
To what end?
Till I die. Till I'm done with the world and it's time for me to move on.
You don't want to go back to selling spaceship parts?
Nope. That was boring as fuck. Literally, my training was looking through this catalog book of parts. So it's like bolt 1, bolt 2, bolt fucking 5,000 and nut 1 and nut 1,000. It's like, fuck that.
Would you have done things differently? If we press rewind, we go back a year.
If I had opened for the right reasons, with the right purpose and goal, yes, it would have been different. But if it wasn't, no, I don't think it would have. I think I would have done the same thing. Now that I'm me today, I would have done it differently. But if I hadn't had that experience of Shik closing, I don't think the right reasons or purpose or goals would have enlightened or come to life, and me accepting that.
You closed the restaurant in April. It's now July.
Yeah.
How have you come to be where you are in terms of your state of mind? What was the, plot it out for us on a graph. What's it look like between April and now?
It was fine. After initially, the shock of being evicted and repossessed, and then making that phone call of I need a job, it's been pretty good, I guess. Like the stress of constantly saying to suppliers, I'm sorry, I can't pay you yet. I'm going to work on that. Please be patient. Apart from that, it's been good. Like the pop-ups that I did were really good. Again, self-doubt and self-justification matters had arisen, and it was good to see people actually enjoy my food in the right state of mind that I was in, rather than waiting for the justification from people and approval. So yeah, it was great. I feel like I'm actually cooking for the right reasons now.
Rather than for approval?
Yeah.
Question from the internet. Does social media play a part in any of this conversation?
I think social media does play a part in this conversation, but it's also not the end-all and be-all.
For good or for ill?
Yes, for good or for ill. There's great things coming out of social media. Social media for me has opened a lot of avenues in terms of networking with people and learning from different people. But then you've got the problem of the influencers, I guess, these days, which is kind of being shown everywhere. But yeah, false hope. But I think false hope comes from yourself.
So not what you're reading, but how you read it.
Yeah.
Is that, and what about media?
Again, both ways, I think. It's great, but it's also bad. Like for me, every kind of outlet kind of label, well, not kind of, what I keep
The moment when I said to you, buy a fucking sign, was when I said, how are things going? And you said, I'm getting some press in, insert prestigious publication here. And then I was like, that's great, buy a fucking sign. Yeah, no,
I obviously heavily relied on that. But it's just, I guess every venue that I worked at since Vini, like Berta was opening, 121 was opening, Momofuku was opening, Bells was opening, and my whole experience has been fucking go from the get-go because of all the media. yeah, so
Maybe it was just go from the get-go because they
They were
had
better.
signs. Bells has
Berta struggled to be found as well.
That's
You know
true.
that.
That's true. And Momofuku's in a weird laneway in a casino. Still.
Yeah, but like I think ego and greed is the root of all evil when it comes to restaurants.
You said to me that though most of your friends, with the best of intentions and acquaintances in the trade, said, hold on, keep doing it. But you also said that a well-meaning but also quite experienced and successful Melbourne restaurateur, who we probably shouldn't name, said to you partway through the process, mate, maybe you should call it a day.
Yeah, maybe you should sell.
And how did that land? When was that, and how did that land with you?
That was around October, I think, last year. Yeah, the individual came to the restaurant and he had
This is
a
a
meal.
person whose advice you would consider, certainly, whoever you are in the trade in Melbourne.
And he just said to me after his meal, I really enjoyed that. Here's my number. Let's catch up for a coffee. I was like, well, if it's you, fuck, I'm there. Like, tell me when and where, I'll be there. Caught up and he was just like, how's it going? Asked me a few things about the numbers. And he was like, maybe you just sell it. Call it quits and walk out with less debt or walk out with a bit of chump change. And that shook me pretty hard because it's like, this is me. You're telling me to essentially end my life. That's how it felt because it meant so much to me for this restaurant. Yeah.
There's some people in this room potentially, and maybe some people who'll be watching this on the internet later, hi internet, who might be in a similar position to the position you were in, at the beginning of this year. Do you have any advice for those people?
No. There's no answer. Like, if it fucks up, it fucks up. If it works, it works. There is no answer, I don't think. If there's people that came here for answers, I'm sorry to disappoint you. But there is no formula. There is no right. There is no wrong. You can only be right for yourself and only yourself. I think that's a big lesson for me. Like, if you're going to do it for yourself, don't fucking listen to anyone and what they say. If you're going to do it for others, fucking make money. Don't listen to yourself, ignore yourself and make money.
We started this talk with the worst day of the year or the last 12 months. What's been the best day?
The same day. The same day when I started.
Perverse motherfucker, Pete. Do you know that? The same day.
Yeah. The same day. After I said I'm not going to go for loans and I'm going to lose it, and I started calling my mates for jobs. That was when it turned into the best day of the past year.
Why?
I don't even know why. It was just like, sweet, I can live again.
Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Peter Joe. If I failed to ask you a question and you're on the internet, I'm sorry, but maybe someone in the audience will ask it for you. Who would like to ask a question? Please put up your hand. The question is, in addition to looking at all 90 Korean restaurants in the Melbourne CBD, what other research did Pete undertake before he set out to open Shik?
Ego was my research. Knowing that my product's going to be good and knowing my peers are doing good with their restaurants or apparently doing good. Yeah. Sorry? Yeah, I guess that's kind of the mentality that I was in. I was like, I'm going to do something fucking great with Korean food and it's going to be tasty and I'm not going to suffice at shit Korean food. Yeah.
And that's enough of a unique selling point that if you build it, they will come.
I thought it was. I literally thought it was.
The question is, did Pete do as much research on BAS and the ATO side of things and the zero invoicing system side of things as he did into kimchi and bibimbap?
Didn't actually
Roughly.
look into bibimbap.
Back of house stuff.
I knew I was
quote unquote
pathetic.
unsexy stuff.
Yeah, I know that I'm really pathetic on the computer. Like I can sit behind a computer for like a minute and I lose attention. So I employed everyone for that. I employed Happy HR for HR. I employed an accountant and went through all of that. And just, technology with all the photos and send the invoices off. I just relied on that. So yes, it was my mistake.
Did you write a business plan?
Yes, as much as I could, but I didn't have real guidance, I guess.
The question is, where were the red flags coming up, and where were the red flags coming up from the people that Pete was employing on the business side?
That was ego. I'm afraid
So your
to
accountant,
admit.
for instance, was saying, "Hey, Pete, this money not coming in, money going out situation is not tenable." To which you would say,
It will get better. It'll be fine. Like ego, false hope, and there's only me to blame for that. And the best I can do is own up to that and make sure I pay the wages that I owe, plus some. I've promised them as well. The super as well. I'm committed to paying them. Even if let's say if I go insolvent, I don't have to pay the super, but I will personally pay the staff the super that's owed to the super account. Everything and anything I can do to make amends so that I can comfortably say I'm opening a restaurant again. Yeah, anything and everything.
did everyone catch that from down this end? It was sort of basically elaborating on the earlier question. Did Pete run his numbers as aggressively, perhaps, as he might have?
Yes, I did as best as I could to my understanding.
You didn't open the business thinking it wasn't going to make sense.
No, with all the numbers as well, I projected a lot lower than I was achieving. So like with food, like let's say averages, with the projections, I said $50 head spend. In all honesty, I was getting 60, 70 head spends. My food costs, I put it up.
Your food costs were pretty good once you shaved it back, right?
Yeah.
What were you running at?
Sorry?
What were you running at?
At the end of it, wages was 2.2 minus mine. Like 50% because I wasn't working. But yeah, like with all the projections, I was very conservative. I lowered my takings and I also added extra on my spendings.
Where was the shortfall? Just
Numbers.
Just custom. Just
Covers.
people coming through the door.
Yeah, people coming through the door, me being overstaffed for too long because of my ego and false hope, believing it's going to be okay.
You're far from alone in that position, I should say, Pete. I mean, I've been covering this beat for a long time in a lot of places, and that's probably it's a really common response to this situation. There was a question from here, madam. The question is, what was it that convinced Pete that this was a good idea? People fail often, but seldom talk about it, and certainly not in as unvarnished a way as Pete has today.
Mike reached out to me and said, do you want to talk about this?
Michael Bashetta.
I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. I'm
It's
amazing.
Bashetta.
I know how to pronounce kimchi properly. And he said he thought it'd be good for the industry. And I do genuinely care about this industry. I want it to be strong and successful and stable. The whole "Are You Okay" movement and all that. I think it's really important. And then also maybe trying to raise awareness on the other side, not just within the industry, but are there people here that aren't in the industry? Yeah.
Sorta, kinda.
You're industry, aren't you? Don't I know you?
Who are you? What are you doing here?
I thought you were a chef. Oh, sorry, you look very much alike.
Looks really relaxed. I don't know.
But customers, there's a lot of misunderstanding there. Like, they'll always complain about how expensive it is when you put up prices by $1. It's like, well, inflation's higher than that. What about that? Like, you don't complain about your mortgage rates going up.
Are you crazy?
What?
People complain a lot
they complain,
about their
but
mortgage rates.
they accept it.
No, No, they don't. They vote governments out for it. Are you mad?
I'm naive then. I've got no idea. But, you know, they're complaining about so many things about the restaurant, like wages, not wages, but everything.
Every fucking thing.
You know, like our wage rates keep climbing. You know, we've got some bullshit system where, not bullshit system, but it's just like, there's such a head fuck now. Like, you employ someone, after so many hours, there's a loading rate, and then you can't work the next day until there's like a buffer of how many hours, and then all these other nonsense. And it's like, well, we're operating a business, and we need to, if you're working, you need to stay open, or you fall into a trap that I've fallen in. And then maybe the government wakes up, maybe more people come out and say, hey, I fucked up, like, can you help us? Like, we're trying to do good things here.
I think if you're waiting for the government to help out this industry, you're going to be waiting a while, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, no, just overall.
Let's keep campaigning for that to happen, but, you know, we need to look at other models in the meantime.
Just overall awareness, I think, for everyone, for patrons, for employees, you know, like, yes, it's fucked that I've lost a restaurant and I couldn't pay wages, but I think everyone else kind of needs to understand the consequences of that. Not from, like, I'm not trying to justify what I've done, but like suppliers hassling me, rightfully so. But like yesterday when I was mentally preparing for this, I curled up into a ball and I was shitting myself. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? What am I getting into? And then I came to the question, am I actually happy, like, with where I am? Am I content? Or is it me hiding from the pain and convincing myself to be happy? And then I was questioning a lot. And then it was just like all the suppliers that have been contacting me all the time. When can you pay me? Can you pay me now? And it's like, well, like, I owe 50 different people money. I still have a big mess to clean up, a whole $160,000, and you're $1,000. Like, I haven't run away. I'm not running away. But then it's like, to what detriment do they keep hassling me?
How are you I've never closed a restaurant. How are you supposed to order the paying of your creditors? Is there an agreed way to do this, Sophia? You pay your employee entitlements first and your super, and then anyone?
Yep.
Secured loans, the lease, and then that earns you a question. The question is, and it's an acute one, was there anything that anyone could have said to Pete during this time that would have made him consider doing things differently?
No. Again, the reason is ego. Being too proud, you know, thinking that I'm invincible and thinking I'm great. Like, it's just all ego, I think.
The question is, who did Pete think would the target market would be for Shik, and what would get them through the door?
As stupid as it sounds, I kind of tried to market it towards everyone and anyone. Like, you could come
by hiding it on a street with no foot traffic.
I wanted to come. It's just, I can't, like, it's ego in media, just relying on that, expecting the word to spread. Like, it came like 6 months after, when New York Times came, that was a big shock for me, because people. Well, it was funny because, like, the whole time before New York Times, Melbourne didn't come. Everyone was from America, and not America, like Sydney or Hobart or
like
Adelaide
America.
or New Zealand. Everyone was coming from everywhere but Melbourne. The only people that really came from Melbourne were industry and like mutual friends and stuff like that. The New York Times came, and then everyone from Melbourne started coming, like, oh, I'm here because New York Times said I'm not ready, but now I'm here. And then they disappeared after 2 months.
Is that like a weird cultural cringe thing? Like, we need to hear from, like, an outside source that stuff we're doing is good?
I guess that whole Sydney-Melbourne thing kind of plays in, I guess. I don't know. I don't know.
But so who was your? So anyone and everyone was your target customer,
Yes.
or people who want to know about Korean food.
Yes, and I think I know no one came, but I think I kind of achieved that. I had like overseas students coming in, and they could spend $25 on a meal and go per person. I had a fair few like 70, 80-year-old retirees that had never had Korean food come and enjoy it. So the demographic for me was quite broad, and which is what my target was. And then I just kind of hoped that there'd be enough numbers, and then eventually it would just flow out into a pattern. And then I could structure the restaurant towards that pattern.
You've got a question, sir, but just for a moment, what would success have looked like for you, Pete? Would you be your dad 20 years from now, fat and happy? I don't know if Pete's dad's fat or happy, sorry. Running a restaurant that's busy telling off his son for thinking about getting out of the spaceship parts trade? I mean, had you, in sort of formulating your goal for this restaurant, what did you want to happen?
Can I answer it in today's, Peter?
You can answer it any way you like, in an interpretive dance if you like. We've got a
Rockstar, David Chang of Korean food.
Isn't David Chang the David Chang of Korean food? No, he doesn't do Korean food until now.
Yeah, no, it was all ego and...
So a bit like that scene in Being John Malkovich where he suddenly turns to puppetry and like transforms the whole genre. You would be that guy.
I haven't watched it, but
Slightly
yes.
obscure reference. Sorry to anyone under 40.
I haven't watched it, but I guess yes.
It's just yes, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was, like I said, I've been saying a few times through the course of the night, I opened it for the wrong reasons, with the wrong objective and the wrong outcome. Yep, purely because of ego. It was essentially just to become a rock star, world famous. Kimchi Pete, fuck him. Whereas, not saying it's going to be right, but now I want to do it truly for Korean food and my growth.
Like Jjigae Pete.
Well, you can call me Kimchi Pete, because that's the first word for kimchi.
Japchae Pete? We can work this out later. Sir, a useful technical question from the gentleman. Was the site on Niagara Lane that Pete took the first viable site that he looked at, or had he given it some serious shopping around? And can I jump in there, Pete, with a piece of information none of you want or need? But I remember years ago, Uncle Morris Tazzini saying to me that he looked at 5 sites a month, every month. He doesn't open 5 restaurants a month. He looks at sites all the time. And the ratio of sites looked at to restaurants open, he's not bulletproof, but he's got a pretty good record. So something to consider. Pete.
I had spent 3 years looking at sites.
That's not a bad ratio. What are some successful restaurants in sites that you looked at?
None.
Aha.
I can't think of any.
Was that financially driven, where you were looking like $2,500 a week in the centre of this Melbourne seems approachable?
The budget was somewhat open because my dad had promised that he would lend me more money if it comes to the time I need it, because he had already lent me, I think he lent me like 100,000 to open it, along with 100 of mine. So there was that false security, because as soon as I opened, he's like, I'm not helping you. Which isn't his fault. Like, I shouldn't have relied on that. I've blacked out, sorry.
Was it the first site you looked at?
Yes, sir. No, it wasn't. I looked for 3 years.
What spoke to you about this site, apart from the absence of foot traffic, signage, space, and a good kitchen?
Nothing.
Nothing? Well, why did you drop the hammer on it?
Because I got impatient. Because I'd looked for 3 years, and mind you, like everything I looked at prior to that was like $200,000 a year, plus outgoings or whatever. It's like, whereas this was 110. impatience, ego got in the way, made a wrong judgment call, and here we are. Yeah. So yes, and I still failed at doing enough research. I think that's the common occurrence with all the questions. Yeah.
We've spoken at great length about the the wrong reasons to open a restaurant. Just to close, Pete, what are the right reasons to open a restaurant?
I think that's individual for everyone. Everyone has a different reason to opening a restaurant.
But you need to maybe think hard about it and make sure it's something that's actually true to you. I don't want to cheapen your experience by looking for an up note here.
No. I think it depends.
But if you can find one, that would be rad.
I think it depends on what you want. If you want a chin-chin, then you have to think about different things. If you want to go that chin-chin route or you want to go the route that I want to pursue. I think it depends on that. If you want to go the chin-chin route, I don't know. I can't think like that. If you want to go my route, just make sure it's true to you and not give a shit and be smart. Start small, like with a 6-seater restaurant maybe. Don't employ anyone.
Don't ever open a 6-seater restaurant if you're trying to make money. Don't listen to Pete's business advice yet. This is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, no, I think you need to learn to not let ego get in the way. And once you're open, again, not let ego get in the way. And just be real to the whole situation and to yourself. Yeah, because false hope's a bitch. Ego's a bitch. Everything's a bitch.
On that characteristically
you wanted a upbeat
note. Pete, I think everyone here has really honoured you with their attention, and you have in turn honoured them with tremendous candour, and I thank you for that. I really enjoyed hearing from you. As tough as this has been, will you please join me in thanking Peter Joe?
Thank you.